Anyone who has been saved from slavery, what is your story? When I was young, my mother sold me into trafficking and I became a child slave to the slave masters. There were many kids there my age, but the slave masters didn't care how young we were, they still worked all of us to the bone. If there was anything that was too hard for them to do, they always sent a child out to do it. Because why would they pay a hefty penny for us and then not use us? Between being denied food and the beatings, the worst thing had to be working in the lake. As soon as I arrived at the village, they told me to untangle steel nets that are caught on trees at the bottom of a lake. I didn't know how to swim, so I tried to protest, but my defiance led to me being thrown into the lake. The slave masters didn't like hearing the word no, and it was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. But I also had to learn that I would be seeing a lot of kids die right in front of me. After I got thrown into the lake, I was thrashing and trying my best to stay afloat, and while I managed, the kids around me weren't so lucky. I was horrified when I watched their lifeless bodies float back up. I did the hardest work a person could ever do that day. I had to dive to the bottom of the lake for hours trying to untangle all the steel nets. It was obvious we were less than human to the masters, and this was especially obvious when one of us got ill. Instead of getting us medicine or treating us, they'd get mad that their merchandise wasn't in perfect condition. If that wasn't bad enough, those who were healthy were denied food. It was a power play. The masters loved being in control, and they loved reminding us that there was nothing better out there. This was our life and we just had to deal with it. I almost believed it. There was a story the masters enjoyed telling us all the time. They said that there were kids being snatched up from the village with the promise of freedom. To a kid with nothing, that gave me hope. But that hope was instantly destroyed when the slave masters continued their story. Apparently, those kids never found freedom. Instead, they suffered a fate worse than slavery. Their organs were harvested. It seemed like every corner I turned someone was out to get children, to make sure they could give us the worst life possible. Just when I had given up all hope of being rescued from this horrible life, everything changed. One day, I was approached by two men and they did something I never expected anyone in this low-life village to do. They were kind to the other children and me. They tended to my wounds and gave us fresh water and food. It was easy to trust them after that because they treated us like actual human beings. I was so starved to be treated right that I didn't doubt them for a second when they promised us they would take us somewhere safe. It didn't even occur to me that these people might be the ones that harvest our organs until we were far from the village. I was scared out of my mind, but there was no turning back at this point. The men must have noticed how worried I was, so they did their best to reassure me that I was actually safe, and that they would do anything in their power to make sure I lived comfortably from now on. They told us we were going to be on the road for 10 hours so we should get plenty of rest. I couldn't sleep at all though. I was anticipating what would happen when we did stop. I kept wondering where we were going and I didn't have it within myself to ask because I was scared of the answer. When the car did stop, my heart raced on for miles. We stepped out of the car and slowly walked to the building in front of us. We were greeted by so many adults, and they didn't look evil like the slave masters did. There were also children running all over the place playing with toys. I had never seen anything like it. I wondered if I had fallen asleep in the car and I was dreaming. But no, this was all real. A woman introduced herself to us and explained that we were at the Many Hopes Recovery Center. She showed us around and said they were here to help us with everything we needed. They started by letting us shower and giving us fresh clothes. I had never felt so clean before. I could have cried in that moment from how generous everyone was. The woman told us to think of everyone at Many Hopes as bigger brothers and sisters, and that they were going to help us get a bright future. A couple days later, I started a long-term process to recover. I was put through extensive therapy to help me manage the trauma and to get some control of my childhood back. I didn't hold anything back in the therapy sessions. I wanted to be heard. I wanted them to know my story and see how much I had suffered and how grateful I was to the workers at the recovery center. Then, they granted me the opportunity for a completely free education paid for by the charity. I had never gone to school before and the slave masters definitely didn't take time out of their day to make sure we got a proper education. Even though I was way behind everyone else my age, I was determined to learn and catch up with everyone else. I was going to make the most of the opportunity I was given, and I wasn't going to fail anyone. All of my hard work paid off in the end and I was awarded the highest honors of admission to university. Many Hopes were more than happy to pay for all the semesters and supplies. I knew I was making a name for myself and I was finally someone I could be proud of. But my struggles went past my studies. I still couldn't cope well with the trauma I went through as a kid. I felt the lake surrounding me, keeping me down and not letting me reach the surface. I drown and I float back up. It had been years since I was in that lake and yet I was still haunted by them. The children that were left behind or have been brought since I left are experiencing the same things I went through, maybe worse. I was terrified for them. They had no idea there was a way they could escape, no way they could ever feel safe in this world. But what if I could bring them to safety? The moment I graduated I had a new goal in mind: return to the village to rescue every kid there that needs my help. When I arrived, I introduced myself to all the children and told my life story to anyone who listened. They were skeptical at first that someone could make it out, but my trauma was the same as theirs, and you can't make something like that up. I could see a shimmer of hope in their eyes, the same ones I had when the men came to rescue me all those years ago. Right now, I'm part of the Many Hopes team because I want to make a change so that the kids could make it out and live a normal life. We're running investigations to locate kids who are trafficked, finding out where their homes are, and freeing them out of child slavery. Our Many Hopes facility receives donations to this day and every cent goes a long way to ending modern slavery. It's sickening to know people are still being trafficked, but there are also so many good people in the world who care about our case, and who care about saving the kids in order to give them a chance to have a proper childhood. Many people live in comfort and turn a blind eye to the rest of the world, but I would never be able to live with myself if I didn't help the children in any way I can. I wouldn't be the man I am today had it not been for Many Hopes, and I want every kid who got their childhood stolen from them to take back their lives and make the most of them. I myself am a prime example of the change made by people who care, and by foundations like Many Hopes that make a difference. So, If you are thinking about making a change, you can donate to Many Hopes, and every time someone signs up for a monthly donation we save 12 children, or any other cause, because together we can change the world.